Hello there, it's Mr. Kowalczyk, and it's time for a presentation about Cornell note-taking for Avid. Once again, Avid's mission is to close the achievement gap for all of our students by preparing them for college. And Cornell Notes is a great way to be organized and ready for college because you learn skills, organizational skills, once again, note-taking skills, things that can help you pass your classes, and that is so huge. You see, note-taking is really a cornerstone of our class. So, what are the advantages of doing some Cornell note-taking? Well, the advantages, of course, are, hey, you're going to master and understand the info. It's efficient, it's quick, and it goes in sequential order. What do you need in order to do this? You need a writing utensil, but then you also need a piece of notebook paper or Cornell note paper. Cornell note paper. As a reminder, if you don't have any Cornell note paper, it's okay to use regular note paper. It absolutely is. You're just going to have to draw some lines on it. What do I mean when I say draw some lines? There you go. You'll have to draw some lines, especially down the side. So you could take notes over here on the right side of your paper, and then on the left side, kind of narrow, in a narrow type column, you'll be able to put some questions later on. But you can take notebook paper and convert it into this. So, let's practice it. If you've not already gotten a piece of Cornell note paper, let's go grab some. In the back of Mr. K's room is a bin, and there's a sign above it that says Cornell note paper. Go over there and grab a piece. Come back to your desk. If you need to, press pause on the video because you can always start it back up when you get back. Next, now that we have our Cornell note paper, let's start filling it in. Let's start filling it in. First off, what's your name? You got to write that down. Then, what class and what block are we in? You're in Avid, but what block? Is it G1? Is it M5? What's the date? Well, it's October, not October, what am I saying? It's August, so put down the correct date, all right? And then what's the topic? What's the objective? Well, our objective today is taking Cornell notes. So we've got to be sure that we've got all of those 4 items down. Once you've got them done, you can then move on to something known as the essential question. And I'm giving it to you today. How are taking Cornell notes different from how I have taken notes in the past? Now, several of you in our class have already taken Cornell notes. You have a good idea on what you're supposed to be doing. If you already know what to do, that's fine. That's great. I get it. Well, use today as an opportunity to brush up on things and improve your skills. So that's our essential question. Write that sentence down. Once again, if you need to hit pause or rewind a little bit, go ahead and do so. Keeping things rolling. Keeping things rolling. Now, whenever we have a lecture, and right now you are taking notes, you need to begin taking notes about this PowerPoint and about me speaking to you about this PowerPoint. So, as you're taking notes, you want to start writing those notes in this yellow box that you see here. During the lecture, write in this section only. Don't worry about questions over here on the left. Don't worry about the summary down here at the bottom. Wait till the lecture's over to do that. During the lecture, you're only writing in this yellow box. Let's just keep it that way, all right? Let's move on. So, why are we taking Cornell notes? Well, it does a couple of things. Number one, it helps you to work on assignments and study for tests outside of class. We're going to show you about that. It's going to help you have some good critical thinking skills because being able to think outside the box and use your brain is huge. You can't always rely on others, especially the teacher, to help you. You've got to be able to think through solutions and come up with ideas yourself. Of course, it helps keep you organized and it helps you recall information, and you can use these notes multiple times. These are all wonderful reasons why to take Cornell notes. All right? Are you writing this stuff down? Are you writing down some of it? Are you writing down key points? Are you abbreviating? Because once again, as we said a moment ago, you need to be writing notes in this yellow section. Are you doing that? Now, whenever you are writing notes in Cornell style, once again, you write them over here in this, oops, I wanted to use a different color. Over here in this yellow section, right? Well, when you're done with your notes, Perhaps you get a little bit of time in class. Perhaps the teacher's done lecturing. Perhaps this video's over. Then you can start working on the 3 to 4 sentence summary that goes across the bottom of the last page of your notes. And what does that summary do? That summary answers the essential question. Okay? What you can also do once you are done taking your notes is begin working on the questions. Because what you're going to do is, over here on the right, you're going to have little paragraphs or little sentences or little statements, little definitions. You're going to have all this stuff that you wrote down. Well, what you need to do is create a question that answers that. Create another question that answers that. Create another question that answers that one. You see, you should be working on all of this. You should be working on all of this after the lecture or the video or the presentation is done. Before the lecture, as a reminder, you fill in the top. We've already done that with our notes. So you always make sure you fill that in at the beginning, before the lecture begins, before the video begins. When there is no essential question, once again, when there is no essential question, what I'm talking about with the essential question is this right here. When you don't have an essential question, like the teacher does not give it to you, you're going to probably have to make it up yourself. I know that might be annoying, but there's things that you can do. First off, you can start looking for objectives. You see, teachers have to use standards and objectives to teach their lessons. You might be able to go onto the Department of Education website and look for standards. Perhaps you have a textbook, and that chapter that you're working on in history class may have a list of objectives. All right? Of course, the essential question is something that you are going to be given in AVID class, and we've talked a little bit about that. Once again, math will have their standards. All of these different things can be found. So, if we're talking about math, your essential question could be, how is a system of 2 linear equations solved by substitution? Now, where did you get that? You used the objective from the book, or perhaps you used the objective from a website, and you turned it into a question. All right? If you're working on a topic in science, once again, you got to turn that into an essential question. This is going to take critical thinking skills on your part. Keeping it rolling. We move on to the next slide. So, during the lecture, all right, perhaps it's a lecture, perhaps it's a video, whatever, you probably need to be doing some things to make it quicker and easier for you to take notes. If any of your teachers are like me, they're going to probably talk really fast. So you're going to have to learn how to paraphrase ideas. So as the teacher's talking or as you're watching a video, you might have to take whatever they're saying and put it into your own words. When you're doing this, skip lines between different ideas. That'll help separate things so that you're not combining two things. So if you're in math class and you're talking about triangles, there's a difference between talking about the perimeter of a triangle, and sometimes there's a difference between talking about the different angles inside of a triangle. So you may want to skip a line as you're discussing those. You're going to have to learn how to abbreviate, use phrases, and even start using bullets and making lists. Recognizing cues from a teacher is also important because they might be able to pause when it's time to start a new idea. Or they might pause before they're getting ready to ask you a question. Or ask, of course, any of the students in your class a question. And you got to be listening for those questions because that might be able to give you some new ideas and some new info to put into your lecture. Don't be afraid to use outlines, diagrams, pictures, and graphs. All of those are super helpful. Being able to come up with some sort of a picture, some type of graphic image can really help you remember stuff in any class. After the lesson, go back and read through those notes. Highlight any of the important info. Cross out any info that's just not that important. And put a little asterisk or a star next to any information that you think might show up on a test or a quiz. And as we're saying this, highlighting important information, crossing out bad information, putting stars next to information that might show up on a test or a quiz, develop a habit of doing this. And do the same things every time you do Cornell notes. Because if you use the same steps in doing these Cornell notes, it'll always be easy to remember for future classes and for future lectures and for future note taking. After the lesson, don't be afraid to compare notes with a partner. In class, we've talked about study buddies and how important they are. Now, some of your study buddies might not be taking notes. But if you have some people who are taking notes in class, talk to them, because that way you can fill in the gaps. You might be able to correct any information that you wrote down that was wrong, and that way you can also identify important information for the class. So, it's time to create questions for the left side of your paper. What type of question should I write? Well, what you're going to do is try and phrase the question on the left so that it helps you recall info on the right. What I like to say is, look at the info you have on the right and imagine that that's the answer to an essay question or the answer to a vocab question. So if you're looking at all the answers, what do you think the questions might be on the left? That's what I would suggest. You try and look at that information on the right and imagine that those are essay answers, and you need to create the questions that go along with those essay answers. Look over the page of notes. Spend time doing that at home. You might be able to put aside some time to do that, and I suggest at least doing 1 to 3 minutes per page of notes. If you have 4 classes each day, that's 1 to 3 minutes per class per night. You're spending 15-20 minutes doing this. And when you get home, that's when you can write the 3 to 4 sentence summary at the bottom. So you're looking over your notes, you're trying to get a feel for things, write the summary. You want to identify the most important pieces of your information and, of course, answer the essential question. Your summary should reflect upon the most important info from that lecture. So write it out in the summary sentence at the bottom of your notes. And as we see here, we come to our final slide of the day. Here are some completed questions. Here's a completed summary. You see, all of this stuff is going to cover the notes. All right? All of this stuff is going to cover the notes. And as you're writing your questions, you're going to cover the notes on the right. So this is what you can do. You can take these notes and use them to study. Imagine that you folded your piece of paper in half. And if I'm going to say fold it in half, what I'm talking about actually is folding it right along this line. Why? So all you can see are these 3 questions. So read those questions out loud and then try and answer them out loud. What? Yeah, answer them. Because the answers are over here on this side, which is folded. This is a great way to study. Perhaps you can study with a partner from Avid, a partner from your class, or if you have to, you can study on your own. And as you go through all of your notes and you start answering all these questions and you're doing your best to try and understand everything that you've learned, you might find that 1 or 2 topics come up that you're a little bit hazy on. Well, then go back and give extra time to those. Give extra time to those so that you're properly ready for that next quiz or that next test. And of course, don't neglect to look at the summary again, because that's going to summarize the main points and answer your essential question. Now, if you're in my Avid class right now, you've been taking notes. What I'm asking you to do is hold on to those notes and put them in your Avid binder and put them in the Avid section, because they will be graded for a binder check. Hopefully this video was helpful and refreshing. Thank you until we talk and meet again.